So now it's time to run and compile with Webpack. And what I want to do is actually start to work my project as its own individual project. So I did install all these things globally. So some of them I won't necessarily have to install again, but a lot of them I want to have local. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to install Webpack without global. So let's go ahead and open up terminal. And inside of my TS setup here, we'll do npm install and Webpack. And this is bringing it into my local project. So if I look in Sublime Text, once it's actually done, it brings the node modules in here. So that's a way to kind of keep my package together. So if you've worked in a virtual environment, it's kind of doing something like that. So I can also do TS loader. So npm install TS loader. I'm going to leave the other ones for later, and we'll go back down to run and compile Webpack. So now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to just add this Webpack file. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And now in TS setup, I'm going to go to new file and we'll do webpack.config.js. I'm going to paste that stuff in and we'll talk about this in just a moment. So one of the downsides to using the TSC watch is, yes, it does compile things fine, but if I create a new file in here, let's call it second.ts, and we'll do class, and I'll do secondary, and I'll just add a constructor, because that's what you do, parentheses, and we'll just say console log, hi. We'll save that, and with TSC config, if we go into dist, notice second.js is also there. Let's go ahead and delete this bundle. But second.js is also there. That's not what we want. We actually want just one file. So that's where webpack.config.js is going to handle it for us. So the first thing is we notice that it's taking in entry. So entry being what's the point of entry for everything? What's going to be the main file essentially to compile from, and that's where main.ts comes in. Now, that will make a lot more sense once we link files, but for now, main.ts is where we're going to. And then basically we're going to be using that TS loader, like I said, and then we're going to use the file name of bundle.js, and the output is going to be inside of our main directory here, and then it's going to look for dist, so this folder. Same spot as before. So really, same spot as tsconfig, right? So it's got that out dir. It's doing that same thing in Webpack. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this. We're first going to do the non-minified version. So we'll close out tsc config, and we'll just do webpack.watch. And then I get this error. Okay, so notice that it says module build failed, could not load Typescript. Try installing with npm install Typescript. Or if it's global, then we can just link it. So it actually was global, right? So when we did the installation, we did this, right? So you can use the global version as it says with linking it. So if I just did close that out and do npm link Typescript, let's make sure we spell that out, Typescript, hit enter. It should link it now. So if I do webpack.watch, it is now working, okay? So we could have done npm link Webpack as well, but I wanted to show you guys that error. So if you see it, that's what happens. Obviously, it gives you, it's pretty verbose, so it does say what it is. So that's pretty nice. But notice it did build it. So if we go back into our dist file, we see bundle is in here. Okay, so it has a lot of other code in here. It has Webpack in here with it. So that's where that other code is coming from. And then it has that initial function. So going back into our index file now, instead of using main, we're going to use bundle.js, and all of that should work fine. So let's go ahead and run that server again with http server-c-1, and we refresh in here, and everything's working as intended. Okay, so going back into our setup guide, I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and we're now going to make a new TypeScript file called getCoffee. So I'm going to close these down a little bit, and I'm going to make a new folder even. So I'll say new folder, and I'll say coffee. This is not in the guide, so boom, boom, boom. Actually, I'll rename this folder. Before I do coffee, I'm just going to rename it to src. And then inside of here, I'll make a new folder called git, or rather coffee.ts. And oops, sorry, the folder name should be coffee. And then inside of there, we're going to make a new file called getcoffee.ts. Okay, so notice it has 3 folders in here. It's a little different than what we did here, but I'm going to go ahead and first off make a class, and I'll call the class must have coffee. And just like we've already seen before, we're going to add a constructor in here, and we'll do console log and make it bulletproof. Okay, so must have coffee, make it bulletproof. Now, how do I use this class inside of main.ts? What do I do? Well, there is a way to actually import things inside of Typescript. So you can actually do import and using these curly brackets from somewhere. So in our case is .source/coffee-get coffee. And the class name, of course, is what we're actually wanting, is must have coffee. So there we go. So I've imported it. Now, the problem here is I'm getting an error, of course. The problem here is my class, I didn't actually export it. So if you want to allow things to be imported, you have to export those things. It's just how it works in TypeScript. Once I do that, must have coffee is now a class I can work with. So I can say let coffee equals to new must have coffee, and then there we go. So I'm actually now working with this coffee itself. I save it. Notice the module or Webpack is still running. I go back into my project, I refresh in here, and boom, make it bulletproof. It's working just fine. So that is what Webpack has done. It's actually combined those 2 modules and made them into one. So if we look in bundle.js, there it is. It's now just one file. And we can take it one step further and make it one minified file. So if we wanted it to be minified, which if you're not familiar with minified, you'll see what it is in just a second. I hit watch, optimize, minimum. We now go back into bundle.js. This is a minified file. It's fairly hard to read is the point, but it's minified. That means it's only on one line typically. And it's also going to get rid of all the extra spaces, which makes it just a little bit smaller of a file. As we see here, let's actually try that again. So I've got minified file. Let's just take a look at how big it is. It might not make a difference with this little amount of code, but we see here bundle.js is 791 bytes. So let's go ahead and just get rid of optimized minimum. Now we go back into the Finder window, 791 bytes still. Yeah, so it's not actually making a difference right now, but the point is that if you had a lot of code, it definitely would make a difference just slightly. But at the same time, even if it's not making that much of a difference in the file size, it's a lot harder to read. So therefore, if somebody grabs it, it's going to be a lot harder to read as well, depending on how you actually want your code to go about being hidden. Okay, so we basically just did all of these things right here. I didn't really explain them in the documentation, but it is there. It's now working. So that is also how you import things, so you can actually use other classes with each other. So in the next one, we're going to just kind of extend our class knowledge just a little bit further. So if you have any questions on what we did here with Webpack, please let us know. Otherwise, let's keep going.